you're writing the literature survey. And so we want to talk about exactly what's supposed to go into the literature survey, because this is one of the places where many students completely lose their audience, completely lose the plot. So let's talk about it. What many students, if not most, nearly all students do, is they read a bunch of papers. They look at the important papers in the literature, they pick up one or two others, and they kind of just sort of write down what those papers did, which seems reasonable. Like I'm looking at the literature and I'm writing down what those papers did. That's a literature survey, is it not? No, that is not a literature survey. That's a list of papers and their abstracts. Right? They're basically just repeating the abstracts of those papers, and those are the papers they've read, and they stick them in and they get a lifelong literature survey, but it's not useful to the audience. Right? Remember, whenever you're writing anything, you are writing to somebody, and you are writing to them for a reason. So the question is, what is the reason you're writing a literature survey? Well, you have to, right? They told you to write a literature survey, so you're doing the damn thing, and good for you, that'll get you through. But that isn't the reason they told you to do a literature survey. The reason you need to do a literature survey is to take your audience from where they are and to where you want to go. Right? The whole introduction is about that. You're trying to take them from the way they're thinking about the thing now to the way you want them to think about the thing. And so you need to be writing your literature survey and reading the literature with a purpose. You don't want to be just like, here's a bunch of papers in the literature. Nobody cares, right? Nice, but fine, and you'll do okay. Like people say, okay, they read some stuff in the literature, but they didn't really understand it in context to their paper, right? What you want to do is use your introduction and your literature survey to take people from the way they're thinking at the moment to how you want them to think about it, right? And this goes back to your implied audience, right? If your audience, right, you're trying to take them from where they are to where you want them to be, well, you need to know where they are to the best of your ability, right? To the best that you can judge that. How are they thinking about this issue now? Or are they not thinking about this issue at all? And you have to get them to start thinking about the issue, and you want to frame the way that they're thinking about the issue. So this is one of the purposes of the purpose of the literature survey and the introduction, is to get them to be thinking along your lines and to fit those lines into the literature. So how is what you're doing new? How is it building on the shoulders of those that came before you? How does it fit into this literature? So if you just list a bunch of papers and tell what they did, sort of repeat their abstract or introduction, I don't know how your paper fits in. I don't change the way I think about this already to how you're thinking about that. Remember, there's any issue that you can deal with. There's many ways you can think about it, many ways you can come at it, many ways you can address it, and lots of them are perfectly valid and useful, right? And they might be contradictory, but they're still valid and useful ways to come at it. We need to and I might have one sort of in the back of my mind already. This is the way to do it. And it's different from the way you're doing it. Doesn't mean you're wrong, doesn't mean I'm wrong. It just means that we're thinking about this problem differently. And you need to bring me around, the reader, around to thinking about it your way. Not to convince me that my way is wrong, but to convince me that your way is useful, interesting, and show me how it fits into the existing literature. And so if you just repeat the abstract of those guys, yeah, that's kind of, if that's building it up to something, building up to, yeah, I'm going to build on that. So let's understand that guy's so I can build on exactly the way he's doing it. That is, you want me to be thinking about it the way he thought about it so that you can build on that. That's lovely, right? So it's not that you just you do that, right? You say, okay, what do I want my reader to be thinking afterwards? How do I want to shape their thinking about this? How do I want them to think is a reasonable way to approach this problem? So you want to use your literature survey to one, say that, yeah, loads of people think that this is an interesting problem. You also want to tell us why, but that goes a long way to me thinking, okay, probably it's an interesting problem, even if I don't get it quite yet. probably if loads of people are thinking it's an interesting problem, probably it is. So that's useful. And then you want me to be seeing things your way. So your literature survey should be building up to that. So for example, you might have a paper, a famous paper in the literature that is doing things a particular way, and you want to do things slightly differently, but you're building off of him in lots of ways, right? You don't want to just repeat exactly his framing of everything, because that's going to take people's minds off into a different direction, a different approach to dealing with the problem. You want to lead me to be thinking about it in your way. You got to talk about the famous paper, and you're building on him in many ways. You want to emphasize the ways that you're building on him when you're talking about his paper, right? You want to emphasize the way you're building on that paper and lead me to be thinking, and also this other thing would be nice to build on that, right? So you're writing your literature survey with the purpose of leading me to be thinking about it your way. Now this is really hard. This is not an easy thing to do, because it's sort of easy and straightforward. I need 10 pages of literature survey. Let me just sort of repeat the abstract and introduction of all those papers. And you can do that, but it's not very good. It's not very useful. What you want to do is you want to lead people to be thinking about it your way, which means you have to think about what you want to present of their paper, right? Their paper is long. You're not going to be able to do the whole thing. So you're taking bits and pieces from their paper and saying, this is the important thing for my paper. Now, sometimes there's an important paper that's doing something totally different from what you're doing. And it's important enough that you have to talk about it. And then you can just say, look, here's an alternate way to do it. It's useful for A, B, and C, but it misses D, E, and F. And I want to focus on D, E, and F, so I'm going to do things differently. Okay? That's perfectly good. It's perfectly reasonable. It's saying your literature survey in that case is being used to say, look, this area has been done. Let me move on to this undone area, right? And that motivates the way you're doing it. And in there you have to say why your way is interesting and useful. But then you're framing the literature, we're getting a map of the literature, and we're seeing where your paper fits in there. Like your literature survey is about your paper. Your literature survey is about your idea and what you've been doing. It's not just a survey of 10 papers in the literature. It's leading me to think about the problem your way and to think that's a useful and interesting way to do it.